Sometimes the thing that changes your entire travel plans is not a storm, a breakdown, or some giant mechanical failure. Sometimes it is one small broken part you could almost hold between two fingers. Sometimes your motorhome waits until you're headed to Elkhart to break something so RV specific that you have to admire her sense of humor and her sense of geometry. Apparently, Bertie Bea decided that if she was going to get creative, she might as well do it near the RV capital of the world.
I'm living the wandering gypsy RV life, rolling smooth beneath.
Welcome back to the Wandering Gypsy RV Life podcast. I'm Stan Cromlish, and I run a content creation and a digital marketing company while living and working on the road. That means plans matter. It means also plans change. Equipment gets a vote. Weather gets a vote. Safety gets the first vote. And every once in a while, Bertie Bea calls an unscheduled board meeting. The rolling smooth mindset is what keeps that meeting from sending the whole day off the rails. On Thursday, August 13th, I left Belmont after 11 days at home. The plan was to travel roughly 312 miles to Milton, West Virginia. My normal travel margin is about 300 miles, so this was already a little beyond that, but it was planned. I left early, I had plenty of daylight, and I knew what I was asking of myself and Bertie Bea. The drive went well, and I arrived in Milton with plenty of margin. Then I started extending the slides. Bertie Bea certainly has a sense of humor. I discovered that the sole anti-billow mechanism on the vanity-slide topper had broken. This was a small part with potentially large consequences. The anti-billow mechanism provides a positive restraint intended to keep the topper from unfurling or billowing at highway speed. On this topper, there was only one such mechanism, and now it was broken. The easy response would have been to look at that little piece, tell myself the topper had stayed rolled up so far, and assume it would probably stay that way yesterday. But probably isn't a highway restraint. And an uneventful trip to Milton did not prove the next trip would be safe. So I investigated. I consulted my friends at Precision RV Repair. I worked to understand what that broken part did and what would be required before I could responsibly move Bertie Bea again. Most importantly, I separated a temporary mitigation from an actual repair. A repair restores the system properly. A mitigation has one very narrow job: control a specific risk long enough to reach the place where the proper repair can be done. That distinction establishes a real go, no-go gate. If I could not create an adequate, non-destructive way to restrain the topper, Bertie Bea was staying in Milton, West Virginia. The original itinerary did not get to overrule that decision. The reservation in Dayton, Ohio didn't get to overrule it either. The podcast schedule certainly did not get to overrule it. By then, it was dark. Darkness is not famous for improving field repairs. So I stopped for the night instead of improvising something I could not inspect properly. Yesterday's daylight would get the next vote. Yesterday morning arrived with another variable: significant weather, flood-related alerts, and more than one possible route. At about 5 in the morning, I checked the current radar. Around 5:30, I had identified an RV appropriate route that avoided the severe weather. That sequence definitely matters. I did not make a route decision based on what the radar looked like the night before. I used current information that morning because weather changes and the next good decision has to change with the evidence. Then daylight gave me the visibility I needed to return to my topper problem. I photographed a known good anti-billow mechanism on another slide, so I had a reference for how the secured arm should sit. The first available screw was wrong, too small. I rejected it. It would have been convenient just to make it work. Convenience is not the standard. I also rejected drilling or forcing a questionable field modification. The goal was not to prove that I could make the tool fit the situation. The goal was to retain and restrain the remaining arm without creating a new problem. Ultimately, I was able to use an appropriately sized screw from the bracket assembly in a non-destructive way. I replaced the displaced bracket fastener, secured the remaining arm, and compared its geometry with the known good mechanism I had photographed. That was the mechanical part of the mitigation. But there was also human factors problem. The slide could not be extended while that temporary restraint was in place. It would have been easy to trust myself to remember that later, after a long drive in the rain with setup on my mind. It would have also been a bad system. So I added a visible warning inside Bertie Bea: do not extend the vanity slide until the mitigation has been removed. Mechanical restraint outside. Operational restraint inside. Because good safety decisions do not depend on very tired people having perfect memories, and I'm the world's worst. Once the mitigation was physically verified, I made a conditional go decision. Conditional is the important word. I still had a reservation at the Dayton KOA and kept it as a bailout point. Dayton was my off-ramp if I needed it. If the mitigation moved, if the weather deteriorated, if fatigue increased, or if Bertie Bea cast another vote, I had somewhere to bail out. The plan remained reversible. That is one of the most useful lessons you can take from my trip to Elkhart, Indiana. A go decision should not trap you inside that decision. It should preserve off-ramps. As the morning developed, the route avoiding the severe weather made it possible to travel directly here to Elkhart, Indiana. The trip was approximately 385 miles. That is well beyond my normal margin, and I do not present it as a new normal or a recommendation for someone else. In these specific circumstances, it reduced the total miles, eliminated another setup and teardown, reduced another travel exposure with the temporary mitigation still installed. Basically, I didn't have to use my bathroom like a phone booth. Dayton remained available if I needed it. Bypassing it was not a requirement, and stopping there would not have been a failure. Then, during the rainy interstate drive, Bertie Bea decided she was going to show some more humor and called another meeting. The HWH panel suddenly lit up and warned that the right rear leveling jack was down. That is not an indicator you dismiss while rolling down the highway. It's also not an indicator you diagnose by imagination. I treated the alarm as real until direct observation could prove otherwise. I pulled over and safely and physically inspected the jack. It was fully retracted. That direct observation disproved the immediate catastrophe the warning could have represented. It did not prove why the warning appeared. A moisture sensitive or loose connection may be one possibility, but that is only a hypothesis. It's not an established cause as of yet. The warning became a maintenance and diagnostic item for Elkhart. That is another rolling smooth distinction. Alarms should be investigated. It should not be obeyed blindly, and it definitely should not be ignored. You observe. You verify what you safely can. You separate what you know from what you suspect. Then you make the next decision from evidence instead of fear or convenience. I arrived safely in Elkhart. The temporary mitigation on the slide topper did its job. Before operating the vanity slide, I removed it, just as the warning inside reminded me to. All 4 slides are now deployed, and the Dayton reservation was rescheduled rather than financially lost. That's how the trip ended. But a good outcome can tempt us into rewriting the risk that came before it. I arrived safely, but that does not prove the riskier alternatives would have also been safe. It does not prove that traveling with no restraint would have worked out. It does not prove that forcing the wrong screw, drilling a questionable modification, working in the darkness, ignoring the weather, or dismissing the jack warning would have been acceptable. An uneventful outcome does not validate every road you choose not to take. Unused margin is definitely not wasted margin. The Dayton off-ramp mattered even though I didn't use it. The time spent stopping for the night mattered even though the daylight solution turned out to be pretty straightforward. The warning inside mattered even though I remembered to remove the restraint. Margin is what gives you choices before a problem becomes an emergency. And that same lesson applies to running a business from the road. You can make a plan for recording, editing, publishing, meetings, development work, and everything else on the calendar. But the plan is just a tool. It's not a test of character. When the evidence changes, the next good decision may change with it. That is not losing momentum. That's how you preserve momentum and margin without using up the safety, attention, and energy you need for the next mile. So here's my takeaway for RV travelers. Treat a small failure according to its possible consequence, not its physical size. Separate temporary mitigation from a proper repair. Build a real go or no-go gate. Use current weather and route information. Investigate alarms without inventing a diagnosis. And if you decide to move, preserve an off-ramp if you need it. Your coach gets a vote. Bertie Bea's definitely been voting on this trip. The weather gets a vote. Your mental and physical capacity gets a vote. But here's the thing, safety gets the first vote. Then, with the best evidence you have, make your next good decision. That is how we keep people educated and safe. And that is how I keep rolling smooth, even when Bertie Bea schedules several meetings along the way.
With Bertie Bea and Rosie headed to the next sunrise.
Thank you for riding along with me today for this episode of the Wandering Gypsy RV Life Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to like, subscribe, and share the podcast with a fellow traveler so more folks can find us out here on the road. You can find more stories, photos, and adventures over at wanderinggypsyrvlife.com. If you're looking for gear that helps keep your rig running right, check out Techno RV through my affiliate link at technorv.com. They really do help you adventure more and worry less. And if you enjoy cowboy storytelling and rodeo history, my good friend Doug Simcox hosts a great podcast called Beyond the Chutes, which is well worth a listen at beyondthechutes.show. If you'd like to dive deeper into the mindset behind this lifestyle, you can check out the Rolling Smooth RV book series at wanderinggypsyrvlife.com/rolling smooth. Until next time, keep your rig rolling smooth. Keep your coffee hot. And remember, sometimes the best repair isn't just the one that fixes your RV. It's the one that quiets your mind. Safe travels, my friends. And remember, not all who wander are lost.